Digression.
No. I'm not having it.
I mean, is it food we're talking about?
Definitely.
It's very juicy.
Come on.
But I'm just stating facts.
What were we talking about?
Hey guys, salut. My name is Alex and I make food videos on YouTube.
Hello, guys. My name is Josh and I edit Alex's food videos on YouTube.
Hello Josh, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, very good. I'm in the series. I'm working my A off at the moment.
Yeah.
Trying to understand everything there is to understand with fried rice. And this very clever mind of mine, brilliant mind, has seen two words in fried rice. Fried and rice.
And rice. Well done, Alex.
Yes, thank you.
Gold star.
Merci. Today, I'd love us to chat about rice.
Okay.
Rice is a fascinating subject, and it's something that has taken a lot of time for me to apprehend, I think.
What do you mean?
I didn't grow up with rice. I'm a pure Westerner. I was born and raised in Paris, in France. I grew up with wheat.
Yes.
I didn't grow up with rice. Rice was just like that exotic side move. You know, you would pull out on once in a week, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your relationship with rice initially?
I think probably similar. It has I don't feel like this now at all. But I think as a kid, there was a little bit of an exotic connotation to rice in that you ate rice when you had curry, when you had... I mean, maybe that was it. I'm trying to think of other things that we would have rice with. Yeah, as a kid, I think it was just that. So it already had a sort of Eastern vibe to it. There's one difference. One difference.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have rice pudding in France? Do you know what rice pudding is?
What would it be? Like sweet?
It's a sweet...
Milk based?
I think it's got milk. Yeah, it's like
We got it.
Yeah, it's basically like a rice porridge.
Yes.
But with milk, and it's sweet. And sometimes they bake it so that it has a sort of skin on the top of it.
Yes, we have it.
So that, I think, was... Because this is something that my granddad would have eaten. Mm-hmm. So to him, that was what rice was. There was no other way to eat rice.
Mad. Can you believe how mad this is? It's funny.
It's kind of mad, isn't it? Yeah.
It might be great in a way. Because it means that, and I'm just assuming here, it was all about being local then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would you eat rice if rice isn't grown where you live?
And here's the it's not just that was beyond that. That to my granddad, it was unfathomable that rice would be eaten in a savoury context. It was a dessert to him.
That's amazing.
So it was local to the point of... I know it wasn't from there, but it was local to the point of it being... Here's the thing. I don't think my granddad thought of it being exotic. He was just like, rice pudding. That's just what it is. It's a pudding. It's always been there. That's all I think of it. Whereas, I guess, to me, it had an exotic context because I was eating it with curry, which was kind of... It'd been around since the 70s or whatever, but it was newer than... My granddad would never have eaten that.
It's amazing. I can just imagine your granddad, embarking on a trip to China and just, what are these guys doing with rice pudding? People are using it everywhere now. What is this madness? I feel like it's just funny to think that he was just a bit like I was somehow, maybe on a different level, but still... The moment I started to understand, well, there is more to rice than what I've been exposed to as a kid.
Yeah.
My grandma used to make rice. So first and foremost, I used to hate rice. I dislike it so much.
How can you dislike rice?
It was disgusting. It was disgusting. And now I know why.
Okay.
It truly was. My grandma, who was a great cook, an amazing cook, rice, come on, she was boiling it for I think too long now, and she would serve it along with an enormous knob of butter and grated cheese on top, and sometimes even tomato sauce.
Wow. Okay.
It's just like, what is that? I was like, this is too heavy, this is lumpy, this is mushy, it's not alive as a dish.
Did it feel completely out of context to like the other things that you were eating? Like, as in
Yes.
it's just sort of
It's
been
like,
thrown
what
in
is
with
this
no...
in the
yeah.
first place?
Yeah.
I'm not. As a kid, I thought this is not a dish I should be eating. This is not on my map.
Mm-hmm.
And it took so much time for me to just really appreciate rice. And I think I started doing that when my mom, because my mom is very much into traveling.
Okay.
So she bought a rice cooker in the Chinese district in Paris, and she brought it back home, and she started doing rice this way. And I was like, oh wow. I still dislike it because I think my taste buds were just like offended by rice at that time.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, I can feel the grains. That's nice. And it's soft, but it's not like pureed. Not bad. And then I started, not investigating, but maybe I started being less defensive about it.
Mm. Yeah.
What about you? Did the relationship that you had with rice evolved? How long did it take?
Yeah, I suppose it did. And there was for starters, I have never liked rice pudding. Maybe because my granddad loved it so much. That to me was weird. But having rice with curry, for example, that seemed completely normal and natural. And then I think after curry, we would have started getting Chinese takeaway a little bit more and would have been introduced to egg fried rice, which for American listeners, I think they would just call it fried rice, but in the UK, we'd call it egg fried rice. And I don't think I ever disliked rice. I just never even thought about it. It wasn't like... It was just something that was there with certain dishes, but I could never sort of make a through line or a connection as to what it was or wasn't supposed to be served with. You'd sometimes have it as well as like a sort of rice salad. So it was like cold, bigger grains of rice with like, sometimes with,
I know this salad. I've seen it on every picnic ever.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. And in that context, I was never too bothered about it. When it's like next to something saucy and savoury, and just like a sort of either basmati white rice or like a long grain egg fried rice or something, then I guess I was always into it. It's not until I suppose that I've started... I think actually egg fried rice might be the thing that when I started cooking that at home, I was like, oh wow, there's like considerations to be made with how you cook this dish.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it would be egg fried rice. That would be... I mean, you haven't closed eyes. It's not like an eye-opening for you.
No, but I think...
Like it has been for me, yeah.
There's a thing that... Here's the thing that I think I had was that rice was from the takeaway. That was my impression as a kid. That's where rice came from. We didn't really cook rice at home.
Joshi, yes, mommy? Where does rice grow? Well, at the takeaway. That's where it grows. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's the same for me. It does make sense.
The idea of it growing, I think that was even later. That I would even make a connection between the fact that this stuff that comes in a packet and these little white grains comes from a plant.
Well, you're right. And yet, I think even as a kid, I had sort of a vague representation of how wheat grows. I think I had seen wheat fields.
Yeah, exactly.
The golden fields in June.
That's it. Yeah, we would have those as well. So I had some concept that like this stuff gets made into bread, and I'd seen it and held it in my hands and knew what it looked like.
Wow.
But rice, I've still never seen a rice plant, so I've got no idea.
I have seen rice fields in Vietnam, but like not until I was like 22 or 23.
Right. Yeah. See, I've not even had that. I've never seen a rice plant. So
it's just mad, man. I want to come back to one thing, just one detail you mentioned. When you said rice salad, you said you're not bothered with that. You're not bothered with rice salad. Oh man. Rice salad is one of the reasons why I hated rice as a kid.
I guess when I'm saying I'm not bothered, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm
bother
like,
you?
Well, I guess I am saying it doesn't bother me, but in a way that I'm like, I don't hate it, but also I don't love it. Like I nothing it. It's just something that's there, that's completely innocuous. I'm. It's one of those things that just exists that I never questioned. It's like, what is this thing? What even is this? No idea. It was on the table. I didn't touch it. It can stay where it is.
That dish, it's just like a nightmare for me.
Do you know what it looks? Do you know what it summarizes? Do you know those sort of 70s cookbooks where
exactly.
everything's in like a jelly or an aspic, or they're all like in weird bright colours and stuff? I feel like that's where rice salad belongs, in that.
It belongs
realm.
there, and it should remain there. I have. It's very weird. I have at this moment. I swear, it's the truth. I have a very clear picture in my mind, a memory of being with friends close to a lake doing a picnic, and one of the moms just brought in a huge, humongous, disgusting pile of rice salad. It had tomatoes, corn, tuna, and the rice can only be two things in these cases: either undercooked or overcooked.
Yeah, okay.
It's never cooked right. You eat it, either it's crunchy and it's just disgusting, or it's just like an absolute puree of. Oh man, I got the shivers, I got the chills, I got goosebumps from this story. It was just like so disgusting, and I remember having discussions with my mom, I think, about this dish. I was just like very frank. Well, I dislike it because it's disgusting, Mom. It's just like, anyways. I digress here, but I feel like I started from a very low position when it comes to loving rice, where I feel like you got exposed to curry, which I find to be amazing. Well, I got exposed to curry at 15, 16 maybe, to real curry.
I mean, it sounds like... Well, okay, what was your first experience of eating rice with Chinese food?
Fried rice.
And how old would you have been?
I was young, but it was bad fried rice. It was just like mushy, soft, sweet fried rice.
Because I was going to say, I think that when you have rice in the context of a cuisine that it's like, developed with, like rice and curry is a great combination. Even if it's not done that well, it's still a good combination.
Works amazingly.
So I think that my appreciation for it in that field was, I kind of just went, yeah, okay, of course this is a thing. It's delicious, it works, I like it. Do you know, actually, weirdly, the thing that really blew my mind with rice was when I first had risotto.
Oh, wow.
Now,
okay.
Traditionally, I get, there is a history or a tradition of rice in Italy now. I don't know how long it's been there, maybe 500 years or something along those lines. It's not as long as the tradition that it would have been in Asia. But when I first had risotto, I was like, it's a bit like what you were saying. It's got like butter and cheese and creamy things in it, and the starch from the rice makes it creamy, and there's little bits of ham in it. And I'm like, what is this thing? I was like, this is like a savoury porridge.
Yes.
I was like, but I like it. I can't understand why I like this thing. It's like rice pudding, but savoury almost, And I just, weirdly, that was the thing that blew my mind a bit, because I was like, how is this in part of Italian cuisine?
Yeah, and did you in your mind, did you connect it to rice?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Like, that was the surprising thing. I was eating it. I wasn't thinking about what it was. I was like, oh, this is nice. What is it? I was like, it's rice. But this is all the things that rice shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the way that this is presented, if this was in Indian or Chinese cuisine, you would send it back.
Well, in just to bring a bit of a counterweight, have you ever eaten the dish called
Congee?
Congee, yeah, congee, exactly.
No, I
That's the
haven't.
one. You read my mind.
But I've seen that before on Chinese menus and thought, I bet that looks like...
Pudding.
Yeah, it looks like a sort of either rice pudding, or if the savoury version of it, risotto.
How was the risotto you had? Was it a good one, like a solid one? Decent?
Yeah.
So grains weren't mush. There's a liaison, there's a thickening agent, there's a sauce, sort of a sauce, or a medium within which all the grains are just floating and evolving, but the grains usually are independent individuals.
Yeah.
So that's the only... That's something that in my eyes is just making this rice related somehow. If you were to mash the grain it wouldn't be rice to me then. But I feel like risotto remains, and I understand how. I mean, in my mind, risotto is just risotto. It used to be like this. It wasn't like a rice dish. It was just like no, it's an Italian dish called risotto. Which it's made with rice. Well, yeah, but it's just. Yeah, I thought it was a complete.
You didn't make the connection. Why would you make the connection? It looks so vastly different to what...
Yeah, exactly. Someone could have told me, like, this is... Alex, this is a different crop. It's not real rice. And I would just I would just be like, yeah, of course it's not. Well, it is.
But look, here's the weird thing. Risotto was actually the thing that maybe opened my mind to start thinking about what was possible with rice. And let me put this into the context of, for example, you've just said, if someone was to show you a risotto and say, this is rice... it would be easy for you to go, is it? I don't think it is. It doesn't look like it is. It looks completely different. In the same way that if someone shows you some ramen noodles and a loaf of sourdough, and somebody says, these two are made from the same grain.
Yes,
like,
makes no sense.
They're totally different. So then I started being aware that, noodles are made from rice. You can get rice wrappers that go around... sort of summer roll type
you're
thing.
Right, that's mad.
There's rice flour can be used for things. And
rice cakes.
Rice cakes, yeah. Rice Krispies, puffed rice,
mad.
All these different things. Even to the point that actually, when I was experimenting making tortillas...
I'm just laughing, sorry, man. Because you just cannot believe you mentioned Rice Krispies. It's just like, welcome to this culinary program with Joshua Sutler and
but why not? I mean, this is what I'm saying.
You're right. F the establishment. You're right. Go on for it. Sorry for interruption.
It can be either an egg fried rice or it can be an American breakfast cereal. It's like...
Yes, that's
I
mad.
suddenly went, okay, this thing is way vaster, way more versatile, means different things to different people. That's maybe the takeaway that I got was like,
yes,
this is not just that one thing that I thought it was. It means different things depending on where you are and who you talk to. Do you know what I mean?
Amazing. Yeah. It's way bigger than what you could ever think it would be.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think I got the same understanding of rice, but way late, I think. I'd say in my 20s or 18 something. When I started doing the first rice that I really grew a liking for, like a genuine liking for, was basmati rice.
Okay.
In Indian restaurant in Paris. So I guess if I were to be born in the UK, I would have grown that liking maybe earlier on. Because it's not that developed here, I think. The Indian community is not as strong in France, in Paris, as it is in the UK. But I had a dish called a thali, which is that stainless steel platter with many different sauces / side dishes on it. And in the center, you've got basmati rice.
Yeah.
Or some sort of a long grain rice, which I believe to be basmati. I'm not 100% sure. And then all the grains were completely independent individuals. The rice was fluffy, light, not dry, and yet not mushy either. It was just like, so that can be rice. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it has a taste on its own.
Rice. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's something that I don't think I never really appreciated for a while, in that it was just something to be covered in sauce. That's what rice was. And then actually when you discover that there is that fragrant element to rice, the sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, but
it's hard. Brani? You know the bran?
Kind of brani. I think that actually, to be fair, the best way to describe it is when someone is eating rice crackers, you can smell it. As soon as they open the packet, you can smell that sort of intense rice smell. And taking that smell and then trying to notice that even when you've just got boiled rice or, fried rice, it kind of translates, and I can sort of go, okay, that's rice. That's the flavour, the smell.
It's funny, two things. It's funny that you mentioned rice crackers, because I feel like, it's a very intense rice flavour with these.
There.
Yeah, probably because of the way they puff.
It's the same. It's the same with popcorn.
Inducing more air or more surface increase the flavor perception. But also, you mentioned something that I've basically experienced myself as well. When you open a package of any food, like especially rice, it feels like the air inside is more concentrated in flavor.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you sniff it right. I feel like a lunatic. I sniff rice packages.
In the aisle, in the supermarket.
Exactly.
With people saying, have you paid for that, sir?
Exactly. No, I'll pay at the end. Get off my shoes. I had the same experience when I opened, and I think I mentioned this before, a packet of Tilda rice. Tilda basmati rice.
Uh-huh.
Just open it and then sniff it. Give it a good waff. Wow. What a smell. What a ride. It's just like exactly, how would I describe it? Obviously cereals, but more like there is a hint of floral.
Absolutely.
Toasted as well.
This with the basmati rice, you say?
Earthy, mushroomy, maybe.
It's got a nutty sort of flavour
nutty,
to it, I think, as well.
Since everything is nutty, I always tend to try and find something else because butter is nutty. Everything good is nutty. But you're right. I think the word that I was looking for is nutty, but I was just trying to avoid it.
No, but it's complex. There's lots of different sort of flavours to it. Like
it's
you said,
ricey.
It's ricey.
It's very ricey.
That's that thing of like whenever I've sort of foraged different mushrooms and someone said, what does it taste like? I'm trying so hard to avoid saying it's kind of mushroomy. Of course it's mushroomy. But it's difficult to describe. Rice has its own set of fragrances and smells and tastes that can only be described as ricey, I suppose.
Oh, of course you try to avoid mushroomy, but if you were to tell me it's mushroomy, I would
know what
still
I mean.
get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And with rice, it's the same. I'm feigning at explaining how it feels, how it smells, pardon. But I feel like you definitely get the smell as well.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. For me, the point at which I really started to appreciate rice, I suppose, was when I decided, okay, I've got a way of cooking this and it comes out bad pretty much every single time. So I should really learn how to cook this stuff well. And when I did that and I was like, oh man, I can make good rice every time and I've got a technique. Now I'm going to try different rices or explore different things.
That's very interesting, man.
Did that happen for you?
Yes, it did. But I'm very interested in learning. So what is your go-to technique? What is your go-to rice now these days? Your I don't want to smear butter up your back either. But I was
I'd
about
like
to
you not to do that.
yeah, it's a French expression. But I was about to say that you are a cooking enthusiast. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And a dedicated home cook. You're passionate when it comes to cooking food.
Uh-huh.
You had experience with rice in the past. You have a background. I get it. What is now your position with rice? What is your go-to rice? And what is your go-to technique when it comes to cooking rice? I think it's going to be pretty interesting for people who are listening.
Okay, so it depends very much what type of rice I'm trying to cook. But I'll give you 3 examples, right?
Yes.
If I'm going to cook a rice that is for, let's just say, Indian or Chinese. Now, I know this is blasphemous, and I'm sure that I should be treating these differently. But this is
just call you a cooking enthusiast.
I'm just telling the
my
truth.
Tongue.
I'm telling the truth about what my home process would be.
Go for it.
So I'd normally go for basmati, maybe because it's to me it's the most easily available, good quality rice in the UK. I think
makes sense.
And again, it's very fragrant and nutty and all those other things that we said. I really like basmati rice, and it's versatile as well. So with that, normally I would boil the rice for around, I'd say, 8 minutes, and then I'd set it into a sieve or a colander above some steaming water with a lid on it, and then I leave it for another 5 minutes. And what I find is the boiling part of it essentially is I find it cooks the grains pretty much through, but the steaming at the end, I don't know why, but it seems to help them with the separation and just getting the right texture of the grain.
This is something you also see in the rice cooker, no?
Probably. I don't know. I've genuinely never used a rice cooker.
Okay, cool.
That's what I would do for basmati. If I'm doing Japanese food or anything that needs a kind of short grain, it's almost sticky rice vibe.
Yes, the plump, yeah.
I would wash the rice quite a few times.
You didn't wash basmati rice?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Well, here's the thing. I think that a lot of the time the basmati rice that we get here has already been cleaned to some extent. You're not going to find stones in it or dust or those other sorts of things.
Rice dust.
Yeah. But I've found that actually with that method that I've just said and basmati rice, it makes very little difference. Because I've tried it, washing it and not washing it, and then I've kind of came to the conclusion if I don't need to, I won't bother. There's probably some people that will tell me there's a big difference. No, there,
probably because you discard the water where you boil the rice in.
Yes. So the water that the rice has been boiled in, I'm discarding that and then steaming it through. So maybe that is part of that. The steaming afterwards also helps.
Because you're washing it in some ways.
Yes. Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
You're washing it with boiling water.
That's the thing. What I'm not doing is
yes, understood.
Pre-wash. I'm not having all of the water absorb into the rice, which is exactly what I would be doing if I'm making sushi rice.
Okay, you have water in excess then?
Yes, I've got water in excess. If I'm going to do, like I said, if we're going to do Japanese style rice, I basically wash that 3 or 4 times and then I put it into the pan and either fill it up to sort of a knuckles worth above the rice with water, or you do a ratio of like 2/3 to a whole, I think. I can't remember exactly. It's something like that. Then with a lid on, low heat for 10 minutes, then turn it off and leave it to steam for 15, and that comes out spot on almost every time.
It's very important to have a routine when it comes to making rice.
That's what I'm getting at, I suppose.
Exactly. To know that the method you're going to use is going to produce good rice. That's... that alleviates sort of a block we could have when it comes to making rice. I'm never going to get it as good as at the Indian restaurant or the Chinese takeaway. Well, you can now because you've got this routine in your mind. You've been practicing it so many times. Yeah.
But this is the weird thing. I think there is a thing sometimes that people sort of go, I can never do good rice. And I was like this. I was like, my rice is always terrible. And then they say, well, what do you do? And they go, well, I bung it in the pot and then I put some water on it and then I boil it for however long. How long? Well, I don't know, whatever. But it always comes out different. And it's like, yeah, but if you took that approach to boiling an egg, it would be different every time you did it. Or if you took that approach to making bread, you're like, what's your water to flour ratio? Oh, I don't know, I just bung it in and there's whatever. It's like, and it comes out more like a batter. And it's like, yeah, because you've not... of course you have to have a routine, because if you want it to have consistent results, you need to have experimented and work out what works for you in terms of, getting the right
comes
result.
back to the fact that this ingredient is in the first place foreign to us. So our initial understanding, our initial approach to it is limited, I feel. But now things have evolved. I can see that. I can share my go-to routine. I think, to be honest, I only cook basmati rice.
Okay.
I don't even bother cooking other rices at my place. On very rare occasion, I would do sticky rice, or I would do sushi rice. But since sushi rice is hard to source where I live, not in Paris.
Really?
In Paris, I can find it. But like at my local grocery store, I can't find good sushi rice. I can find lame one, but I won't go for it because I know it sucks. It's just like a gimmick on rice. Where basmati rice, there's a place super close to where I live, run by basically people of Indian descent.
Mm-hmm. Is it the same place that you got your wet grinder for the chocolate episodes?
It's way closer than this place,
okay,
but
right.
in alternatively, I can also go to the place where I got my chocolate grinder.
Yeah,
and I feel like this is way more available for me, so that's my go-to. I would always use a rice cooker. I would never use a saucepan to cook rice in. And to be honest, I would. I don't think I would ever steam rice either. I will now, because you mentioned it, and Stephanie from Chinese Cooking Demystified, whom I had a chat with, told me I should as well, especially if I want to improve my fried rice game. So I'm definitely going to be into this. But I thought, quite stupidly, I must say, that with a rice cooker, I was somehow steaming the rice.
Why is that
Which is-
stupidly? Let me just prefix this by saying I don't think I've ever actually used a rice cooker, so I'm not 100% sure of how they work.
So rice cooker is the same. You have to wash the rice because it's going to absorb the water.
Right, okay.
So if you don't wash it, it's going to turn into mush. I would rice it till I get some clear water, place it in the rice cooker, raise the water level a knuckle above, the rice, and then let the rice cooker do its magic.
Just on and away you go.
Just on and away. And the thing that I've noticed over the years, my routine is not exactly just put it on and when it clicks off, rice is done. No, it goes a bit further. When it clicks, like it goes from on to keep warm mode. You have to let it stay in keep warm mode for a while. And usually when it's done, I just open the lid, let some steam off, and then close the lid back. And then I leave the rice for 15 minutes or something. And then I get super fluffy rice.
That's interesting, the steaming phase at the end. Actually, I'm realising that's common to all these methods we've just said. In that, when I'm doing the Japanese rice, the steaming phase is quite long because you cook it for 10 minutes. If you were to eat it then, it's nowhere near, like,
Yes.
it's not just that it's not done, but also there's still a lot of starchy, soupy liquid around the thing. But you leave it on the hob with the lid on for another 15 minutes and it just continues that thing. The same thing that you're saying that you do with the rice cooker, the same thing that I evidently do with basmati rice on the hob. There's a steaming phase. So it seems actually kind of important that there is that.
I feel like there really are two stages in all these methods.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about that until just now that you'd said that with the rice cooker as well.
It's a breakthrough, a live breakthrough.
Breaking news.
Yeah, it's like breaking news. For me, at least, it is. I never thought about this. I thought I might be steaming it with the rice cooker. I think so, but at the same time, it's cooking in its own juices, which is a bit odd. It feels like boiling the rice. Talking about Japanese rice, I would also cook sushi rice in my rice cooker. So the texture is never as good as the texture I would get in a Japanese restaurant because I'm not putting enough effort, I feel, into my Japanese rice. The only...
I find short grain to be a lot trickier, I think, to get right.
I think they are.
Yeah.
My rice cooker is a very random one. It's a cheap Chinese rice cooker. It's funny because I had a chat with a few folks recently where Chris, Stephanie's partner on the Chinese Cooking Demystify YouTube channel, who seems to be a geek when it comes to food. And he said, we only use Japanese rice cooker here. And I was like, oh wow, so you don't even use a Chinese rice cooker since you're based in China, in the Cantonese region. He said, no, you're mad. Like, they use Zoe.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce
It's got
that.
an elephant
Zoiruchi.
as an elephant as the symbol.
Yes, I think so. Zoiruchi. I've been willing to get my hands on one of these rice cookers for a while. I cannot believe I didn't bring back one from Japan. But next time I'm in Japan, I'll definitely get one. Like super fancy. But the guy told me, well, they are the best. They are the absolute best at making rice. Perfect rice every time.
Man.
And it works for Japanese rice as well.
Just as a quick little side note, I would love to see what your suitcase is like on the return journey from Japan.
I don't think so.
Like if you were doing what do they call it? That goes in the hold.
Hole.
Yeah. I'd love to see what goes in that. In fact, maybe we should do a podcast on what you would bring back from Japan.
Oh, man, there would be at least 1 or 2 episodes on the YouTube channel just about what I brought back from Japan.
Anyway, that's a side note. But yeah, so that's interesting that actually, even in China, the sort of Formula One of rice cookers is Japanese.
I mean, for these guys at least. I don't want to put them into a bad position.
All right, yeah. They can't speak for an entire country, but yeah, for them.
Exactly. And the guy, I mean, Chris is American in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in the US, so maybe he was exposed to Zoiruchi or Zoe, whatever the brand's name is, because I feel like that brand is available in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I had an experience with Japanese sushi rice with the one very specific rice called Akita Komachi, which is a rice, from what I've learned and read, that is used to make onigiri. So those rice bowls stuffed with whatever you have.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a different kind of rice that is used for sushi, but from my eyes, it looked very similar to a sushi rice. Maybe slightly rounder, a bit less long, even though sushi rice isn't particularly long. It's like medium or short. Maybe it's short.
I think it's a short grain.
Short grain.
Yeah.
Wow.
But obviously there's going to be gradients within that of different things. It's like, you know, there's, I can't remember what they are, but there's two types of risotto rice that I'm aware of. There's arborio and the other one that I can't remember the name
There's
of.
arborio and carnaroli.
So I think the second one, carnaroli,
I think so.
is... I hear that the people seem to say...
It's the best.
Rate it. This is the best one.
Yes, I think so.
So there must be some property to it. Either it's more starchy, which creates a creamier risotto or something. I guess what I'm getting at is there must be a similar thing with onigiri. There must be some property of that rice that makes it perfect for that. Maybe it's slightly stickier, so it holds its shape a bit better, or there'll be something. But yeah, it's those things you don't think about, these minute differences in these different types of rice. But obviously, if it's part of your culture and you're using it all the time, you notice, actually, this grain is much better than this one for this particular application. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
It's like, it's not unusual for us in the Western world to have a difference between plain flour and bread flour. It's like they're used for different applications, whereas just because, you know, someone outside of that is going to go, well, they're exactly the same. There's literally no difference between these two. And you're like, well, actually there's not, because if you use bread flour, you get a bit more chew to the bread that you make at the end, whereas the plain flour, a bit more mealy, crumbly sort of thing.
I get it. I feel it would be such an interesting poll to perform on my... I don't know if you perform a poll, but to what kind of action can you do with a poll? You suggest a poll to people?
I don't know.
Yeah, it would be such an amazing poll to present to my audience. Like, how many different representation or types of rice do you have in your pantry? Like, rice noodle would count as one, basmati rice one, Japanese sushi rice another one. You know, that would be amazing, because I feel like for wheat I got so many variations in my pantry. But for rice, and yet again, I don't think we might be representative of, because I'm working in this, and you're definitely obsessed with cooking as well, so not in a bad way, but still it would be interesting. I think at the moment I've got Japanese rice, because I managed to find some very recently, and loads of basmati rice. And I may have some sticky rice, which I haven't used in years. What type of rice do you have at the moment in your pantry?
So I will have probably a cheap kind of sushi rice. It won't be anything expensive or fancy. I've got basmati, and I think I have jasmine rice as well at the minute, which is something that I haven't used that much, but I've started to experiment with more recently. I bought it to make koji with, which is a whole nother ballpark. But I've actually started using it to cook with, and I've realized even between jasmine rice and basmati rice, I've had to change my timings a little bit, because the jasmine rice seems to keep coming out overcooked.
Okay, wow.
So something that I'm doing is, there's a difference. It needs a slightly different process. It may just be that I'm more sensitive now to how well cooked rice is than I used to be. Possibly. But there is that thing of it. I think it depends on the grain as to how you cook it to get the best results. The other thing that I'm thinking, so I've mentioned jasmine rice, basmati, and a sort of cheap sushi rice. Now they're all sort of Asian variations on rice, and not even scratching the surface of what different types of rice they would have. I'm very aware that we haven't even considered, like in South America or the Caribbean or different parts of the USA, they're all places where rice is super important, and they probably have their own grains. I know there's one called Carolina Gold, I think I've heard about this one. Which was this thing that it's like, you know, it was it used to be a standard. It used to be exported worldwide, and it was like a really prestigious rice, but I don't think it's kind of used that much anymore. I heard about it through Sean Brock and his, is it Husk? His restaurant. He was someone that was on one of the Mind of a Chef.
Mind of a Chef, on PBS. It's funny when you mention South America and then just think also of Africa.
Yeah.
In Africa, they for some dishes, in Mali especially, they use specifically double. I don't know if it's gonna translate well, but I'm gonna go for it. Broken twice rice.
Yes, so I've heard about that. In fact, this was mentioned on the episode about
It's
Carolina
amazing.
Gold rice. In that the texture that are they going for something sort of creamy, almost a risotto for what they're making?
Yes, but it's just weird. It's just like, and they go. In my mind, I would just be like, well, broken rice is just a byproduct of good rice in the first place. And no, it's behaving different. When you use broken rice, and it needs to be broken twice. I'm just like, oh wow, this is amazing.
So obviously,
go on, school me.
Yeah, what they're going for, I don't know, maybe they're trying to get more starch out of the rice.
I think so. Yeah.
So
the sauce is basically based on it.
Yeah. So if it's broken, then you've got easier access to that within the grains. I mean, even then, you saying that, it made me think of jollof rice, which is a dish that is it's in my periphery. I've never had it, but I'm like aware of it. I've heard it mentioned. I've seen pictures of it. It's something that I keep thinking, when I get the chance to go to a restaurant that does this properly, I need to go and find out about this thing, because it's clearly a dish that's important to lots of people. And again, it's another rice dish that it's in there. It's in the peripheries of my knowledge, but I know nothing about. I don't know what kind of grain they use or what the what the method is. But that's what I'm saying about rice. Seems to be one of those things that every country has its own take on it that's really important to them, and it has to be done in a specific way.
Funny, because we seem to revolve around the same dishes or the same elements in cooking and in food in general. Always the ones that are apparently simple. Always the ones that packs more than what they seem somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, thank you for this somehow, for giving me the ability to chat about this with someone. Because otherwise, I'm just here, rumming my thoughts, keep making them spin in my head, like
Listen,
on
man.
and on and on. Oh, I would love to talk about this specific type of rice because I think it's amazing.
Alex.
But it's gonna be. I mean, now we've got us, but also we've got listeners. So people who are genuinely interested in this.
I know, that's the thing. And
I hope so.
Thank God for this podcast, just for my own sanity, because there ain't nobody in my life who is going to want to listen to me yammer on about rice for 40 minutes. 5 minutes is enough for most people. So if there's anybody out there listening and enjoying this, then we need to go for a beer at some point.
I can see the look on my friend's face if I were to say, well, actually, nishiki rice and akitakomachi rice are not exactly the same.
God, Alex is off on one again.
They wouldn't listen to me. I don't think they would. They wouldn't. No. They would not even pretend. I think that they are friends enough so that they wouldn't pretend.
Well, Rice, thank you for helping us to understand the value in this podcast.
Exactly. Thank you, Rice, so much. Have a good one, and thank you for the chat, man.
All right, man. You too. Speak
Bye.
soon.